ultimately, these things work best within your companies if you start from a basis of values that runs through the company. It's very difficult to sell on a very, very painful case-by-case basis why you should do this, why you should do that. When you have a values-driven company that says, of course we should reduce our impact, of course we should invest in local communities, of course we should treat our people well, then you do it intuitively and instinctively, and people look at you and they say that's a good company. And the best companies with the best reputations will often have a base of values. How many of you have got values in your company? I'm expecting to see every hand. Okay. If I called your call centre and said to the person who answered the phone, what are your values? How many of them would be able to tell me? Somebody sort of half put their hand up, but not too much in case I challenged them and said, okay, give me the number of your call centre now, I'm going to do it in front of everybody. Having values on the chairman's wall is not having values unless it affects the way that decisions are taken in the business. There was a financial institution in America, which an insurance company, Northwestern Mutual, which has a basic value. It's very, very simple. Always do right by the customer. I mean, that's cliche. Values. You know, it's really, really boring unless you actually live them, in which case it actually becomes quite dynamic and exciting. We hear these things as cliches trotted out so often, they lose their power. But in this company, they work very hard to make it that way. And there's one example where a gentleman had tried to insure the life of his child, and the paperwork had been held up at the doctors. The insurance company phoned him up after a few weeks, said, look, you know, we still can't get the paperwork back. And he said, well, it's kind of academic now because sadly our baby daughter died yesterday. Dreadful human tragedy, and nothing is going to take away the dreadful human tragedy of that. What the company did was they immediately said, right, well, if the paperwork comes back from the doctors and shows that we would have insured this child, then we will honour the policy. Which indeed it did. And the interesting thing about that was that 6 months later, the chief executive was asked about this at some press conference or another, and he said that the thing that made him proud about what had happened in that case wasn't that they made the decision that they did, because he would expect that, but that nobody had felt that they needed to refer it back up to him to make the decision, because the people on the ground knew that you always do right by the customer. And when faced with a dilemma like that, that affected their decision. That's values. It changes decisions on the ground day by day. And that's the challenge that you need to hold your businesses to really understand. At which point you might say that. Can't be done. I get all places in the world where people say, oh, it's all very well for you, but it can't be done here, we've got too many obstacles. And don't you understand how people in marketing really don't understand this, and so on. And I'll just give you an example of one company who faced a certain amount of it can't be done. A good friend of mine is the marketing director of a company called Marshalls, who sell stone paving and patios and all sorts of stuff like that. And when he took his job there about 6 years ago, Marshalls was an unremarkable company selling unremarkable products, I'm sure to remarkable people, but nevertheless, and didn't have a big profile on social responsibility, didn't have a negative on social responsibility. Until he started noticing some little buzz. They had a product called Indian sandstone, which was very attractive stone, very cheap, comes from India, the clue's in the title, and there was some buzz about child labour in Indian quarries, and he decided that this was concerning enough that he went out to see for himself. And these were pictures that he took. They weren't in the quarry that they used, they were in the next door quarry. But nevertheless, he saw children the same age as his own children, 11 and 12, hacking away at bits of stone in a dangerous spoil heap quarry with the most ridiculous tools, creating little elements of paving for people's patios and driveways. And he was told, when he said, well, we cannot have any stone that comes from this source, he was told it can't be done. Sandstone is bought on the open market in India, you can't trace it, there's no traceability, and these illegal quarries are everywhere, and child labour is endemic. Nothing you can do about it. Needless to say, that wasn't the position that he took. So they spent a couple of years consolidating their supply around one agent who would either wholly own or be at least 85% of the customer of the quarries they bought from, on the basis that this was the only way that they could guarantee proper health and safety, proper care for workers, and no child labour, which they achieved. Interestingly, having started on this journey, they then became the only stone company that has carbon footprinted all of its products. It's actually the only company anywhere that has carbon footprinted all of its products. And they launched about 2 or 3 weeks ago a new brand called Fairstone, where they've been able to quantify all of the different parameters enough that they can now provide a certificate of guarantee, and they're trying to turn it into a consumer brand. Because although everyone understands what fair trade coffee is about, when you buy stone for your patio, you don't even realise what may or may not be behind the product in front of you. So now they're trying to bring the customer with them, because there's a price premium that's stopping that from being in your supply chain. You've got to get the customers to value it to make it work.